Folks, have you heard about what's happening between Apple and Facebook? There's a lot of fighting going on about small businesses and about your data. Let's check it out and see what's really happening.
We're going to start with some breaking news. Facebook versus Apple. Julia Borston has it. Julia.
John, Facebook is throwing down the gauntlet in its battle with Apple over the privacy option that Apple plans to give consumers that would dramatically limit the targeting of ads. This is a change that Apple says that it will be making in the name of privacy protections. Facebook just now publishing a blog post saying it's speaking up on behalf of small businesses, saying, quote, "We believe Apple is behaving anti-competitively by using their control of the App Store to benefit their bottom line at the expense of app developers and small businesses," saying we continue to explore ways to address this concern. Now, with the prompt to opt out of all ad targeting, Facebook says would mean a return to more of a TV-style broad reach advertising. The social network says that would make it impossible for small businesses to efficiently reach consumers using Facebook ads. They warn that small businesses saw a sales decline by 60% when they couldn't use targeted advertising. Now, Facebook saying it's speaking out on behalf of small businesses, but it did warn that its revenue would take a hit in the coming year if it does lose personalized advertising.
Yes. So Facebook says it's speaking on behalf of small businesses, but does warn that its own revenue could take a hit as well, which is, of course, what the concern is. They never had any concern about the plight of small businesses until it was a, let's say, what they claim is a mutually shared interest. Now, Facebook is attempting to cast itself as the ally of small business and Apple as the bully to small business. But I do think that is a significant overreach. There are many ways for small businesses to reach their customers, and there's no particular reason why they should have to stick to a company like Facebook. If we think about what the ideal situation for a small business would be, it would be when their product or service comes up when you're looking for something that relates to that in your area. And if you think about what the ideal situation for you would be, it would probably be to learn about an option from a small business when you're doing that. That's something you'd probably actually consciously opt in for. You know, I would want to know when I'm looking for something, do I have to get that shipped in from a large company like Amazon, or can I actually go and pick that up locally or even sent to me from a local company? Maybe someone I could call up and ask some more questions about the product, learn a little bit more about it. This isn't to say there's a lot of benefit from the reviews and the star ratings and everything from larger vendors, but small businesses do feel like they're part of the community. It does feel like you're enriching a kind of social environment, a social fabric that means you can actually go out and spend time with people in your community and enjoy the city that you live in, and not just have a Main Street turn into a washed out wasteland. So what's the best way for us to actually deal with it? The problem with the way this issue is being cast is it's being seen as an issue of your privacy versus small business. And that really doesn't make any sense, because small businesses existed long before you needed to have your private data taken for them in order to help their advertising efforts, as Facebook claims. How can we actually help small businesses here? We should be building products and services that allow them to speak to users who've opted in to communicate with small businesses, not with Facebook's giant AI crunching machine, in a huge wholesale fashion. And that's really where Facebook has misread the market here, because people do care about small businesses, but they don't feel good about Facebook. Facebook is on the nose. Facebook has a reputation for disrespecting users' data and disrespecting privacy. And while Facebook has been dominant in this space of hyper-targeted advertisements, there are other ways for people to speak to their customer, and there's also an opening where people are willing to talk to small businesses and willing to have that communication. So there's a great opportunity for someone to start a business, maybe you who are listening to this right now, that actually helps small businesses connect with their customers in a way where people opt into communication that they would not opt into from broad-scale advertising from larger companies. I'd also like to say that it gives small businesses the opportunity to actually become more connected with their local communities as well. If the way you see yourself connecting with your user base and your customers is to jump on Facebook and click a bunch of demographics and say talk to them, you're not really taking the time to learn about the people in your community. You could instead be using that time and those resources to go and speak to the actual local influencers, the local community sporting teams, the kind of the small groups and who are actually in your community, right? You could go down to the community center, like, leave the house or pick up your phone if you're not allowed to. Do something to actually, engage with the people in your community and not just click a bunch of buttons that Facebook has provided. So I don't really have a problem with the idea that the local pizza shop might need to, speak to someone at the local school, at the local sporting team, rather than just clicking on places and people near me on Facebook. That's not a great way to build community. So if we're talking about small businesses as engines of being parts of the community, then I think there's many better ways for them to connect with customers than with Facebook that even enriches the community even further than just those small businesses existing, which is important on its own.
We're reaching out to Apple for additional comment on this latest pushback from Facebook on its operating system changes.
Julia, this seems like a very perilous escalation that Facebook is pushing here. Maybe they have to, because what Apple plans to do strikes at the core of Facebook's business model. But Facebook is making the case here that targeted advertising and the kind of data issues that we've seen Facebook itself struggle with for years, that those are somehow inherently competitive and good for small business. I don't buy that argument. I mean, I think the likes of Facebook, if they tried hard enough, they could figure out a way to make money, to do good advertising without basing it on the level of personal data that they have.
Yeah, I don't buy this either, because if you look at an actual Facebook group, like when you go and do advertising on Facebook, and I've done this, I've bought Facebook ads, I can tell you that was the least effective strategy. It was a huge waste of money. By far the best thing to do is actually go and join community groups that are related to what you're doing. Take some time to listen to them, engage in a dialogue with them, and talk to them. That was a much better strategy. And what was the difference there? One, I wasn't paying Facebook any money. Two, I actually got to learn something about the customers that I wanted to serve, because I could hear what they were talking about, see what other people had spoken about, engage in a dialogue with them. It was much better for the customer, and it was much better for me. And it didn't require me to have any data on them. I just simply looked up specific community groups related to topics that related to the products that I was working with, and that was the way to make the connection. And that has been a resoundingly successful strategy. So the idea that I need Facebook to automate that approach for me is just flat out wrong. Alright, so we've had a look at that perspective. Now let's have a look what some other people have to say.
This month, the battle for control over our online data reached boiling point, with a pair of titans making power moves, hoping to secure access to it over the coming years. So today, we're strapping on our flak jackets and wading onto the battlefield so we can examine the so-called privacy war kicking off right now between Apple and Facebook. Facebook has built a phenomenally successful and lucrative business over the past decade and a half, although it's not necessarily obvious how Facebook makes money. After all, unlike, say, Spotify or Netflix, Facebook demands no monthly subscription with no in-app purchases from its astonishing 2.7 billion strong user base. You scroll, you post, you like, and it's all free, right? Of course it isn't. Advertising is how Facebook stays rich. Specifically through ads that are hyper-targeted using insights extracted from Facebook's colossal cache of user data.
And here's where it's really interesting. These hyper-targeted ads from Facebook's colossal cache of user data. Great, right? That means you're only going to be seeing ads that are relevant to you. But the question is hyper-targeting bad, or is hyper-targeting from a company that doesn't really care about your privacy, that doesn't really think very much about what's in your interest bad? Because Facebook isn't just hyper-targeting ads, right? They're hyper-targeting specific techniques that try to keep you as engaged with their products as possible. So I want you to think about these parts not as like Facebook is this monolith where the only way you get highly specific advertising is with Facebook's privacy model, with Facebook's hyper-targeting, with Facebook's engagement techniques. They all come bundled together. Now we can actually pull these pieces apart and you can just pick the ones that you want, right? I want to know about new businesses that have started in my local area because I'd be interested to see if they have something to offer that I'd like to use. I do want to know about that. And I don't want to know about services that aren't really interesting to me. So I'm happy to have some level of targeting with any kind of promotional messages that I receive. I'm willing to receive some messages each day, but in general, I think the sheer quantity of advertising is way too much. And I really have no interest in having big brand advertisements because I've already seen enough of them.
Suppose you're a florist looking to attract new clients. You could take out an ad in the classified section of your local newspaper where lots of people might see it, but maybe not the right people. Or alternatively, you could spend your precious marketing budget on Facebook. There, for a fee, your ad will be expertly slotted into the news feeds of prospective brides or, say, the local peony appreciation group. It's a no-brainer and has been for quite some time now. However, Facebook's slick business model might soon be upended. Because coming soon, early in 2021, Apple plans on updating its iOS software to make data privacy a more visible issue for users. According to some estimates, there's around 1 billion iPhones out there, which will instantaneously be subject to the change, not to mention tens of thousands of iPads. So what will the change look like? From next year, whenever Facebook updates its app, users will be asked to opt in to its information harvesting program on a data point by data point basis. That means you, as an iPhone user, will be asked specifically if you're happy for Facebook to continue collecting data on your specific whereabouts, say, or your spending habits, or your marital status.
Here's the issue, right? Like, everyone, the vast majority of people, like small businesses. They like local businesses and they're happy to support them. And most people don't really like having a giant company know an extremely large amount about them. And Facebook is trying to craft this narrative that those two somehow go together. That if you like small businesses, you need to give up a lot of privacy for 2.7 billion people around the world. And that idea is frankly ridiculous. Small businesses existed a long time before Facebook came along, and they were successful. There's also room for a company to come along and create a product that really is solving part of this problem, but not all of it, in a different way. So why do we need to say, if we want to have messaging from companies that are local to us, why is Facebook the only option? Why is Instagram or another Facebook property the only option? It's simply not, all right? Someone could build a product where we just opt into receiving local offers. And products like that have been created. Like, this is not something that Facebook owns the access to. Facebook does not own access to the market for small businesses. And if they did, that would be absolutely terrifying. And they're not even close to doing it. So it is completely fine for small businesses to use other options and for us to feel good about stopping an entity like Facebook, which really doesn't respect our privacy at all, or want it to do good things with our data. Facebook is not collecting this data exclusively to market a few offers for small business to you. All right, if they were, they would have a much stronger case, but they're absolutely not. What they're trying to do is market the maximum number of offers of the maximum number of businesses, and the way they do that is try to keep you maximally hooked on their product. And here has been one of our central points. All right, you are worth to Facebook 40 cents an hour in the US and much less anywhere else in the world. So do you think your time is worth 40 cents an hour? Do you think you should have every psychological trick known to mankind focused on your brain automatically by the most powerful computers in the world, by some of the most clever engineers in the world, so Facebook can make 40 cents an hour? Is that how you value your life? Because if you have an issue with that, then you need to look at every single piece of how Facebook is building their software and go, is that something I want in my life? Is that something I want in my kid's life? Because those kinds of weapons-grade neurological hacks belong possibly not in your life at all. Or if they are in your life, they should be weaved into, they should be intertwined with things that you really value. You should go, all right, the hardest thing in my life right now is getting my diet under control, but I'd like to use the most powerful psychological tricks in the world based on all my personal data and the best artificial intelligence to help nudge me towards better choices. Well, great. That's a really positive use for that kind of technology. Maybe you're spending too much money. Maybe you're not in control of that. Again, another place where these things would be great. Or you're procrastinating. You got a productivity issue. Whatever it is that you want to solve, the ethical place where these extremely powerful techniques belong is in helping you conquer the things that are standing in the way of your true life objectives. These sorts of highly manipulative techniques based on a huge amount of personal data are not going to best serve you when they're there to try to keep you trapped in loops for 40 cents an hour for whatever advertiser wants to bid on your time. That is not your best path forward as a human.
This is, obviously, the very information that makes Facebook's ad platform so devastatingly effective, and the company's ability to extract it from you seamlessly is crucial to Facebook's bottom line. Unsurprisingly, Facebook is strongly opposed to this incursion on its turf and is fighting the move in a very public fashion. Earlier this month, Facebook took out full-page ads in the Washington Post, New York Times, and Wall Street Journal newspapers. In bold type, the ad thundered that Apple's proposed changes would limit businesses' ability to run personalized ads and reach their customers effectively. There's little doubt that Facebook ad campaigns, for better or worse, are now an integral part of any small business marketing strategy. So what's Apple's position? As opposed to Facebook, Apple trades on its transparency. Apple products might set you back a pretty penny, the argument goes, but what you see with Apple is exactly what you get. So even though Apple knows what you buy on Apple Pay, or what you play on Apple Arcade, or what you watch on Apple TV, the Cupertino tech giant never harvests your data for nefarious commercial purposes. Privacy is therefore just another luxury enjoyed by Apple customers, like rose gold tinting.
It's certainly interesting to see privacy described as another luxury like rose gold tinting. In fact, if we go and look at some of the analysis of why people put ad blocking software on, privacy is not a major reason. The top 3 or 4 reasons are because ads are just annoying or too intrusive. You know, there's a lot of people out there who do favor privacy, but as an actual strong selling point for the product, it's got much more of a niche appeal. The main advantage of having someone like Apple putting filtering, blocking, these sorts of controls in place is it just makes you feel like someone is standing up for you in the war against the intrusiveness of some of these advertisements, which just feel like they're way too invasive.
So Facebook's legal approach is to paint Apple as a tyrannical monopoly acting with callous regard to the little guy. In this case, for instance, a florist who's now less well equipped to flog posies to neighborhood blushing brides, all of whom have by now radically adjusted their privacy settings. The outcome of this skirmish matters. On one hand, how easy should it be for firms like Facebook to harvest our user data in order to sell stuff? On the other hand, how much power should hardware giants like Apple wield over what rival companies can and can't do? And with brand new, immersive, data-heavy tech like augmented reality coming fast down the pipelines of both firms, it's clear that the battles presently being fought over the oil of the 21st century are only just getting started.
Folks, your privacy matters, your use of technology matters, and above anything else, your time matters. Time is the one thing that you truly can't multiply. So when you look at these companies fighting with each other, when you look at Apple and Facebook arguing with each other, I don't want you to think my choice is to take Apple's side or my choice is to take Facebook's side. I want you to think my choice is to take the side of my time. How is my time best spent? Is it best spent inside an application that is trying to trick me into low-value uses of my time, low-value uses of my life? All right? Maybe some of my time is usefully spent there because it's got some things that are valuable, but the idea that huge amounts of my time is spent there, I think that's something that most people don't really see as very valuable, but feel themselves slipping into more than they need to. So when you're thinking about these applications and who's standing up for you, I want you to be very, very critical. Are the people promising to stand up for you helping you make more effective uses of your time so the goals that you really have are best achieved with technology? With that in mind, remember, it's your life, so take charge.